Hello! Welcome to the podcast, There Is No Spoon. Have you ever wondered if life could actually have rules? Not just personal tips or cultural norms, but real, universal principles that might work for anyone. In a world where everyone's path seems so different, is that even possible? Take a moment to think about it. I'll share my own take at the end of the episode, but I'd love to hear yours too. You can leave a comment on YouTube or take part in the poll. Today, we're kicking off a new season of There Is No Spoon, and this time, we're diving into 12 Rules for Life by psychologist Jordan Peterson. A few years ago, while studying mythology, I stumbled upon some YouTube lectures by an author I didn't know at the time. The lectures were about the psychological interpretation of biblical stories. I remember what struck me first. These were hours-long discussions of the meaning of just one or two lines from the book of Genesis. Who, aside from scholars, could possibly find that interesting? But when I looked at the view count, I was amazed. Millions of people were watching those lectures. And the comments were even more curious. People wrote things like, "Listening for the third time, still don't understand anything, but I'll keep listening." So I figured these videos were worth watching, and I did. Later, I discovered Peterson's lecture series on personality psychology, and then his two books, 12 Rules for Life and Maps of Meaning. The title, 12 Rules for Life itself, raises some questions. Existential or analytical psychologists often object to titles like this, as if life could have rules. And in our era, where everyone sees themselves as unique individuals, how can universal truths even exist? I put off reading the book more than once, assuming it was another piece of pop psych fluff. But eventually, I finally sat down to read it, and I'm glad I did. Before diving into the book and the rules themselves, I'd like to say a few words about why Peterson personally resonated with me. Like many others, I have different approaches and viewpoints on big, existential questions. On one hand, because of my education, life experience, and general worldview, I relate strongly to a scientific perspective. As mathematician Eugene Wigner once wrote in his essay on the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics, and as philosopher Hilary Putnam later echoed, one of science's most compelling features is its effectiveness. The achievements of the past 2 centuries, especially technological ones, are mind-blowing. As a child, could I have imagined the iPhone or a global internet? Not even close. To this day, I marvel at how I can access any information and talk to anyone in seconds. Science really is effective. We see the results every day. Whatever anti-scientists may say, they always remind me of the saying, "Don't bite the hand that feeds you." They criticize science while benefiting from its achievements every day. From a psychological perspective, science's achievements act as constant positive reinforcement for a scientific worldview. It's hard to believe in Yahweh, Buddha, Allah, or Krishna when you're constantly bombarded with counter-arguments. This mindset within psychology leads to cognitive psychology, which, in my humble opinion, is the most scientific of the psychological disciplines, if that term even applies here. Cognitive scientists have conducted a huge number of experiments that have slightly pulled back the veil on our minds. In last season's podcast, we explored people's belief in a just world. A seemingly simple belief can lead people to create defense mechanisms and illusions just to preserve it. And that's just one cognitive bias. There are so many more. However, one problem with cognitive psychology is that it doesn't delve deeply. Existential questions, the why and what for kinds, are outside its scope. Cognitive scientists often claim such questions are meaningless, ironically, or unscientific. To some extent, I agree, but the questions remain. What counts as a problem in psychology? Whatever people say is a problem, and existential concerns have been on people's minds since ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. What's science's response to this? Essentially, a Buddhist one, noble silence, or not-so-noble noise from some popularizers who act more like apostles. So yes, these questions exist. and I believe each of us must answer them personally. Why am I going on about these two perspectives? Because Jordan Peterson's uniqueness in today's psychological landscape is that, as a true Jungian, he tries to reconcile opposites. He has consistently stated and shown through his lectures and books his commitment to Jungian ideas and analytical psychology. His search for meaning in archetypal stories from the Old Testament, his use of metaphors like chaos, order, and the Ouroboros, his frequent mythological references, all point to a Jungian approach. At the same time, he respects and engages with modern scientific research. You can see this in his references to scientific articles and his focus on the Big Five personality traits. For those unfamiliar, these are 5 broad dimensions found across cultures: extroversion, openness to experience, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and agreeableness. You can interpret empirical findings in various ways, but Peterson clearly devotes a lot of effort to connecting and integrating both perspectives. I find this highly productive and valuable, and unfortunately rare today, when most people cling to narrow, one-sided views that only work within limited contexts. This is especially important for Jungian psychology, which has become somewhat insular. I've seen some empirical studies on it, but not enough to draw strong conclusions in a pragmatic discourse. All in all, I believe Jordan Peterson's work is worth discussing. And that's the plan for this season on There Is No Spoon. Beyond summarizing his ideas, my goal isn't just to explain the books. Rather, I want to use Peterson's ideas as a jumping-off point for broader discussions. While Peterson's main goal was to structure and communicate his thoughts, I'm more interested in exploring how his ideas connect with Jungian psychology, philosophy, and related topics. So, although the structure will loosely follow the 12 rules, the season's real focus lies elsewhere. Finally, I'd like to say a few words about the rules themselves, the topic of upcoming episodes. First, I believe Peterson invests the word rule with deeper meaning than its everyday use. A rule is a particular way of responding to a given stimulus. In other words, it's a pattern of behavior for certain situations. This doesn't mean you must always act that way. It's a rule, not a law. A rule typically reflects a deeper idea. You need to understand why the rule exists. For Peterson, each rule has a meaningful foundation. Following a rule isn't mechanical. It's an attempt to engage with the life experience behind it and to understand its origin and value. Understanding where a rule comes from helps you know when to apply it and when not to. Sometimes, though, it's helpful just to follow a rule mechanically. Humans have a biological component, like animals. And simply following certain principles can already improve your life. We tend to think change is about something big, a major decision, or life-altering moment. But the reality is, change happens through small, everyday choices. What we focus on, who we spend time with, what we think about. Rules create a framework for possibility, even if it's not immediately obvious. Try it. Compare the results. Ultimately, the best measure of any psychological concept is how well it works for you. And lastly, sometimes you may find yourself, as Dante put it, in a dark wood. That state can be healing, but you also need to find your way out. Good rules act as landmarks that help you rebuild yourself and your inner world. At first, we use others' rules. That's part of how we grow up, by copying the values and behaviors of our parents and society. Later, as we mature, we develop our own. But here's the catch. Why not just create your own from the start? The answer is painfully ordinary, because that's just the way it goes. A beginner joining a team that's been running for a while often has many ideas for improvement. Some ideas are weak, some are useful, but beginners usually lack a full understanding of their role, the project, or why things work the way they do. They may assume everyone else is an idiot, and that may be true. But more often, the system exists for a reason. You can change things, but only when you understand them. So yes, creating your own rules is great, but only once you've deeply understood the existing ones. And that's what we'll be doing this season, through the lens of 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. This was the podcast, There Is No Spoon. Until next time.